we're on. Rachel, I'm actually super excited about for having this conversation with you. I shared with you when we met, I think a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that yeah, I was just buzzing after our call, even though it was very bad internet connection. Yeah, we didn't really flow necessarily because of the internet connection. However, it just felt I just felt really seen by you. I just felt that there was a reciprocity in our relating, that I felt that I was offering some things that felt potentially even new for you, but you offered me your perspective on women and on the feminine principle, that I just had this insight. I was like, wow, I actually feel that this conversation could be really healing for I don't know, for women, for trans women, for others, for men, for I think it could have. I think that what I experienced with you is that if we're both coming from a place of generosity, of curiosity, of I don't have it all sorted, I don't understand entirely what's going on. It seems to me that globally we're going through lots of confusion in many areas, and being with you, actually I didn't feel like needing to defend anything or protect myself or whatever. I just felt really curious and mostly really excited about, like, from hearing your perspectives. And what I truly experienced an opening. I felt more open. I felt really energized, and I felt like, oh, I wish more women had heard what you said, and not just more women, but everybody. So that's why I wanted to invite you into this conversation, and I just shared with you that you're my first guest into this project of this podcast. So that shows my excitement. So I don't even have a format for these conversations yet, but I was just like, yeah, I want to talk to Rachel. I don't care about the format. We just dance with it. And so I'm the only introduction I'm gonna do, and I shared with you that I don't really feel like introducing in a CV or what you do in the world. It doesn't feel it honors the complexity that you are. So I'm just going to share that well, what I said, I felt really seen in your presence. I felt really a beautiful exchange between us, and I felt, and you are in the process of transitioning from a man into a transgender woman to a woman. So you're in the process, right? You're still in this journey.
Yes, definitely. And it's going more internal. There's still the external parts that need doing, but I'm realizing layers of depth to it as I go. So it's kind of opening up into, like, I don't know how long this is going to go for.
I love that.
After about 2 years into it so far. Yeah.
And I love that. And I love that. I'd love to hear more about that. And yeah, so there in the introduction, I heard a conversation that you had with John Bavecki, in which you shared your transitioning as a spiritual journey. I don't know if you would speak in these terms. Is that a little bit how you'd say?
Yeah, I think it overlaps with what for me is the spiritual. Definitely a philosophical journey, in the sense that I really had to look into my categories of things, man, woman, etc. What even gender is in the first place, and the more I dove into those, the more difficult they became to pin down. And yet at the same time, as I told John, the more confidence and reality I sensed, and like the more my life improved through this process of transition outwardly. And that was fueled by this inward questing for kind of the answers, and a real dissatisfaction with the way society has framed just gender in general, and also transition, and the nature of being of a man or a woman or a trans person. Like, I felt like the definitions coming from both inside the transgender community and outside were all entirely inadequate. You know, and it just, nothing made enough sense to me, like based on my lived experience to hold on to like use, you know, to help feed me through the journey. And so I had to kind of like go farming quite a bit and look within and ask questions of others and really have dialogue with people to start to come to some kind of understanding that then like made me realize that the aspiration of gender transition, which is how I would frame a gender transition, as like an aspirational journey in a specific way, was also like kind of like a tributary to a larger river of aspiration, and it could link into this aspiration toward a wiser life, which was like a much bigger, like I was like, at the time I thought gender transition was the biggest thing I could possibly undertake, and then I was like, oh no, becoming a wise person would be so much more than that, you know. And so in that sense I also feel like it's spiritual, like connecting into the greater, you know, river of being, and like starting to realize like the depth of what was possible in terms of like who we can become compared to who we are.
I'd love to know more. I don't know. I think we skipped the introduction. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say about like relevant now. Otherwise, I want to jump straight into something that you just said.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I mean, I've, you know, kind of your typical person, I think. I you know, fell in love with philosophy through John Vervaeke's work a couple years ago, 3 years ago, maybe, and just have been obsessed with it since then. And, you know, tying it together with music and martial arts, movement arts, meditative things, other forms of spirituality. And those are all kind of in progress too right now, and in flux due partly to gender transition. So there's a whole lot going on, you know, and I mentioned in our little chat earlier that, you know, it's a lot of it's been kind of disrupted. And so, you know, I come in my professional work, I do peer support for, you know, people with described as mental health conditions or substance use recovery conditions. And we sometimes use the term disruptive innovation. Like this can be a good thing, you know. It's similar to that whole crisis definition being a, you know, an opportunity as well as a problem. So that's what I'm feeling right now, is this whole mix of things. So I'm really happy to talk to you. I like got a lot out of your you talking with Greg podcast episode a little while ago, and I was like, oh yes, we need, like, this is what my spirituality also needs more of, this kind of the yin-clusion of that side of things. So I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think the first thing that I'm curious about is when you said a wise person. What does that mean to you? Like becoming a wise person. What is that?
Yeah, that's like a great question to start with in terms of becoming wise, right? Like what would that be? Like we all have this kind of intuitive sense of, you know, someone that's wise, but it usually gets mixed into like knowing a lot of things or something like that. And I love the way Vervaeke approached this, which was, you know, being able to see through illusion and into reality to afford a life of flourishing, you know. And I don't know if he's added connection in there, but I would add connection in there, you know, feeling that sense of meaningful connection with the world, you know, even above and beyond purpose, but including purpose. But more of that sense of like, oh, if you're ever in touch with that sense of realness in things, you know, where you just like, you taste it and then you crave it, like you crave the real once you acquire a taste for it. That to me is like one of the signifiers, I guess, or like this is like something to look for in terms, you know, of wisdom. And like I say that as someone who's just like, you know, it's just hard to ever call yourself wise, because you can see the infinity of, you know, being wiser, and you can see your own foolishness quite a bit in life. So it's kind of funny to even aspire to be, you know, toward wisdom, I would say, you know, like, but at the same time, like, what else are you going to do with life,
Mm. No, I love that. And I love how you, well, one of the, I see that one of the markers of being wise is being able to see our foolishness. So I was just
Oh,
appreciating
yes.
your
Mm,
reflection, your humbleness. And
yeah.
I I think that I just wanted to reframe one thing before we kind of go a little bit deeper, which is I can see that I don't know who's gonna be watching this, and there's so many angles that people can take into these conversations. And I shared with you before we recorded that I feel that the conversations we're having, this one doesn't feel like it's the only conversation. It feels like it's thought provoking. We're starting to provoke thought with like new, potentially healthier thinking, and in service of more love, more connection, more beauty. And I don't imagine that conversations are perfect. I think that when we're trying to grapple with complex and sometimes complicated things, as humans, we might say clumsy things, we might correct ourselves in the whatever, and I just allowing the fact that we're humans and we are attempting to be here together in communion to for more beauty and not less. So this is
Yes.
just to take the pressure of us, of any performance, any trying to
Thank
do
you.
anything. And then we can always meet again. We can always meet again, and we can say, oh, that wasn't great, that bit. Let's talk about, because that's what we do in life. It's not that we have this packaged of wisdom and now I'm gonna say all perfect things
Yes.
and you're good, so that just wanted to free us from that.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. And it reminds me of what you said in your You Talking with Greg episode of just like how some of us are not gonna be that like perfect erudite, like, like a dictionary that just talks to you whenever it's called upon to talk, right? Like some people are, and that's great. A lot of us who maybe identify more with the feminine have like maybe sometimes more of a circular, like interactive way of speaking and communicating. And it just, yeah, I appreciate that very much.
I also wanted to say that one thing that I do feel, and I'm not I'm just in the presence of you here. I've sat in front of men, I've sat in front of women, and sitting with you is sitting with a woman. So to me, the physiology, the I'm not thinking about it. I'm just being present to the felt experience of you. Feels to me that I'm sharing space with a woman. So I'm not going to my mind, what's political or whatever. I'm just being present to watch actually like your reflections. And to me, felt like so much wisdom, because to me, it felt like you were a woman, but you haven't started your life as one. Therefore, you have a lot of insights to be able to give that women that only have their lived experience in a female body, we can never have the objective perspective of, like looking at it from the outside. What I think it's actually really beautiful, and I'd love to hear you saying, is that, speaking a little bit more to it, is when you spoke about women and about the feminine in our first conversation that wasn't recorded, you spoke about it with such reverence. It was so beautiful. You said women are these magical beings. I think these were your words. I don't remember. But I was like,
Probably.
well, women actually rarely. I mean, of course, there's some women that think of themselves like that. I can say that for myself, it took me a long time to actually even recognize the beauty of women and the feminine, and I'll go into that a little bit. We spoke about that before, but I'd love to hear, I'd love to hear you on this aspiration, because you were inhabiting one perspective, so you were in a male body, and then that beauty, that magic that you were observing, or that felt experience that wasn't connecting with what you felt, maybe more feminine energy in you, it was strong enough that compelled you to going through a massive transition. Like you decided to just completely change your life. So that's
Yes.
looking from that perspective is quite beautiful. It's quite reverence. Like, whoa, you actually decided to just completely die to one side of you to let
Mhm.
another aspect of you be born, and it's pretty courageous. So I wanted to just hear that, because this mismatch for you, and how did you feel like, oh woman, I want that, because that feels that what feels here. So what was that you felt, that how was that for you?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I reflect on it very often, as you can imagine,
Mm,
and I have, it's very true that I have felt a sense more increasingly to really mourn my past self, even to just to have a literal funeral,
mm,
build made a wreath made of sticks and lay it in the woods, and that kind of thing, because I do feel that I should acknowledge the death and rebirth, even though there's a continuity as well. It's very
mm,
mysterious, this whole thing.
mm,
um, but needing to just say yes, thank you, former self. You were really scared to do this.
mm,
You're not here anymore. You never made it here, but you
mm,
made it. I would love to tell that person, like, you made this, you made it here.
mm,
So it's bittersweet in some ways, really poignant for me to, um,
mm,
take on, and really be with. So, and I think that's important, and not to get off track, but I think that's important to a lot of people who are transitioning to, and part of what I was talking about with John Vervaeke was like, it's just not so simple to just be like, oh, I was always this, so
mm,
no big deal. I just change a few things, I'm not downplaying anyone's journey, because they're always difficult, I think. But
mm,
for me, it's very, there's an intensity, even if this is right for you, this is the right match, that probably in some ways really kept me away from transitioning for a long time unconsciously, so it built up really gradually, and I was never one of those kids that was like, the playing with dolls
mm,
story. I was never super manly, never super womanly, didn't really feel like I fit with the boys or the girls entirely. Just felt off, like,
mm,
just not fitting, and like I remember just thinking about like certain like female rock stars, and like I wanted to be like them, like these punk rockers. Slater Kinney is this band that I was an example of one of them, and this bass player Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth, and I just was like, I want to be these people, but it was almost not, it wasn't even spoken to myself in a way. Like I knew I wanted to be like them, but I didn't think of why that would be the case.
mm,
um, and I just thought they were just so amazing and powerful. Just like, really, that's part of the reverence, is this power of vulnerable femininity
mm,
also being this loud, expressive force, and both at the same time. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like these people are more whole than most people have ever, anyone I'd met up to that point, pretty much in a certain way. I don't want to like dismiss anyone else's wholeness, but I really recognized that, I guess. And at the same time, I was introduced to these women who were like older in their 50s, and they were like, they kind of took it upon themselves to like tutor me. And this is like in my early
yeah,
20s.
oh yeah, so you're in your early 20s, yep.
Yeah, yeah. And they were like, one of them called herself my old crone mentor, and would take me on walks through the woods, like harvesting spring ramps and, in the woods, and just
Mm,
kind of, being that present more than anything, just being this person. And like, I just revered them. I did, like, and I still do. Like, there's just this greatness to them that
mm,
I just resonated with, and I've had like male role model figures, like that kind of thing, but I never felt that like deep kinship and in that way with them, in the way that I wanted to aspire to
mhm,
become. It always felt like the men were like a, there could be like a father figure sort of thing, but it was more of like this outside influence that was like really powerful, and maybe, very beloved to me too, but not in the way like, oh, I want to become this. It was like, I am inspired by this, and this is great, and they're teaching me a lot, but this is what I want to be. I want to be this other person. And this, again, this was like, I'm putting this together now. I had recently heard like Chris Master Pietro say something like, a lot of our major transformations in life have to do with like kind of like changing the context of our memories and like looking at different things in a different narrative. And at least that's what I got out of what he said. And I feel really like I'm looking at this now, putting this together, like, oh yeah, like, and I never thought like, oh, I might be trans or something. Even when I was, watching these TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and like just like thinking like emulating Willow, and like even starting to like make mannerisms like these characters like Willow and Tara, the female witches on the show, and just oh, I think I might have lost you for a second there.
I can see you. I can hear you. Are you there? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think I got lost for a second there.
Mm.
So yeah, I was emulating the women on Buffy, as a younger person, and just and imitating them in my life, and even like nodding like them and stuff. So it was all this like unconscious stuff. And at the time I thought, oh, transgender people, like I believe that they're experiencing this, but wow, that must be tough. And I never really connected with that label at all when I was younger. And it took a long time. Like I had to really come around to a sense, I think, where it seemed more possible for me. Like it seemed like I met some trans role models who were kind of non-binary, kind of flirted between gender roles, and that really was what struck me as like, maybe there's something to this for me. I was like, I started calling myself a butch genderqueer person. Like, I'm just.
Were you a gay man before, or no? Or
No, I've always been pretty bisexual, or whatever the kids are calling it these days, open to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed too much. It's changed in the way that I relate to people, but not the fundamental attraction is still there. So yeah, I was very confused because I was like, well, I'm attracted to men as well as women, and that took a while to get used to. But it was especially difficult because the way that I was attracted to men didn't feel right to how my body was. Like it was like, this makes no sense. Like I didn't feel like a gay or even a bisexual man. Like it wouldn't have clicked, And so there was like a sense of like, I don't get this. I'm not like, I find an attraction to men, but nothing in the world of like gay culture, whatever sexuality was like interesting to me at all. And so it made a lot more sense later when it suddenly, the whole context shifted, and I was like, oh, I get it. I'm like attracted to women, like women, like like a gay woman, sort of, but like to men, like a straight woman. And I used to joke that I'm straight in two genders when I was kind of in the middle of this process, or in the beginning stages of it.
So so for you, it clicked once you start. How long ago was that, Rachel, that they clicked for you, that you're like, oh, maybe there's something there for me?
Yeah, I'm like looking at the clock on my computer, like that's gonna help me find out. Isn't that funny? But like it would have been about, oh gosh, 4 years ago, 4 to 5, maybe 5 years ago, when I started just thinking like, oh, I'm not really like a standard man, but I'm probably, I'm just this, like I said, butch genderqueer person that I called myself. And I did have a trans man friend who was like, maybe you should like look into that a little more. And, and I was like, no, it's fine. It's like, and it took a while of like, I think, unconscious development of that, and realizing that this was a thing for me, like as me, and not like the image that I had of transgender people, which was, to be honest, when I was young, I like did not want that life. Like I saw what people became. I saw like, you know, it's horrible to say, but like the man in a wig stereotype, you know, just people not having the resources to actually medically transition and not be understood and have like really huge anger management issues as a result. And I think like I just did not relate to it, you know, like I didn't want that life, you know, if it wasn't going to improve my life, it wasn't worth doing, I think. But
Mhm.
hindsight, you know. Um,
So
yeah,
then you started looking into it. You think that the resistance was
yeah,
exactly coming from this place of what you imagined, the because what I see you living,
yeah,
and that's something else that struck me. Um, I think that we tend to put everybody in the same basket. So, all
yeah.
women, all men, all
Mm,
transgender women, all transgender men, all um, oh my God, non-binary, as if it's one
mhm,
reason, one motivation, one. And I think that, like with any human, we're complex creatures. And I know that, like, I notice that I get nervous of saying things because I feel that we've been so triggered by different things in the world that
yeah, yeah.
it's really tricky for us to try to understand ourselves better, because any word misplaced can be a source of trigger. So
Mm,
what
mhm,
I do want to say, and I want to apologize in advance if I do offend anybody. It's not my intention. I just want to try to unpick things and make distinctions. I don't believe that all transgender women or men or transition for the right reasons, as if there are
mm,
within themselves. I mean, I'm
mm,
not imagining
yeah,
anything outside. I'm saying being a human is complex, and I think that sometimes it can be all sorts of stuff. Um, but I do feel that, yes, for some people it feels really in. It's like it is it seems to be their necessary next step. It is that transition,
mhm,
and I experienced that with you, and I'm sure there's uh, many people, and I do feel that also. What you were imagining when you thought, I don't want that life, you're also seeing from the outside. You're probably seeing all sorts of different
mm,
models of how transgender can look like, and then you met some
mhm.
people that resonated for you. They were like, okay, this feels true. This feels, I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm.
Yes, like they fit, you know, their life fit. It made sense. You could see them kind of like glowing with this
Yeah.
like energy, like magic, like, oh, like I found a way to be and not, you know, and yeah, I think a lot of people take on some kind of like either, you know, like a very simplistic way of doing it. You know, I was talking about this with John, you know, just and different people have definitely way different inner experiences, of course. Like they might start out at age 3 and already just be like solidly in this transgender camp, like, or you know, they understand it right away. But you know, I think a lot of people like don't understand it as a relational thing that they need to really navigate
Mm-hmm.
in a complex way, like you're saying. Like the society is complex, and it's kind of, it even sets up the types of gender that are available to us to begin with, you know, and it's like setting these parameters. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like that's existing, and the way that gender is experienced and explored and expressed is all societal plus individual, you know, mixed together. And
Mm-hmm.
to learn, I feel like it's more like learning to swim than it is a journey in some ways, you know. It's not necessarily like I'm going from point A to point B, becoming this person, as much as like I'm learning to be in my life in a more fluid way, in a way that fits better, that I can like participate in more effectively, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I saw these examples of people who were really clearly they understood themselves and their place in the world very well, and it clicked for me. That was part of what definitely started to light the bulb for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, coming to terms with like the science behind it, that there was a lot of genetics and a lot of MRI studies and things that were pointing toward like the validity of it as like a scientific construct. But again, that didn't really that's like not something that you can like relate to in your life. Like
Mm.
you can't like, just, oh, I'm this part of my brain and I'm, doing this to this other part of my brain. You have to just live as a person. So that was kind of lacking,
So is it more like is it something, and I might be trying to um yeah get I don't yeah I'm totally honoring that some of these recognitions you're putting these pieces together as you go. It seems that you're really in your experience in. So what I got from you is that you felt this mismatch from a long time ago. You felt some type of mismatch, but
Yes,
you did, and you
yes.
aspired. You had these female role models, but you didn't think you were going to be there. I mean, in some ways you wanted to, but you didn't think you were going to change. And
Yes.
but then I think there is my curiosity is like what did you see as the feminine? Because it's like what I love and became so tangible to me when you spoke is that you actually see more than I think a lot of women do. And I'm going back to this because when you're in it, you don't understand why people would aspire to whatever. I mean, some perspectives, it's like, oh, I'm just here living my life and I'm whatever. I don't know what it is to be that. Like, so what's that you were like, I want to be that because that is what I am. So I don't know. But if you have
Yeah.
this mismatch that you had inside of you, it rubbed. It's like the pearl inside the oyster. It rubs. So you need to look for, if you don't have a rubbing. So for example, for me,
Yes.
my rubbing came in a different way, which we might talk about today, but it
Mhm.
didn't come in the same way as yours. So then for me, it was just being a woman was a given. I have a female body, and then therefore I'm a woman. And then, but
Yeah.
then when you say, oh, hold on, I am that, and I trust and I believe I'm here with you, and I really fully see that. But I'm really curious about what is that you were picking up on, and you're saying that my physiology is not representing this. So what's this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And like I'm still like, I'm fascinated by
Mm,
gender and womanhood like endlessly still. And I guess like one of the things that really like broke it open for me to realize that like yes, I'm trans and maybe I should really seriously consider transitioning was an experience I talked about on John's show, about sort of a universal sense of compassion, agape, generosity that just like
mhm,
broke open in me and then also around me. And the
mhm,
sense was like the feel, and it sounds really like high and powerful and magical. And it was also just like a mom wiping her kid's nose without thinking about it. Like it was that kind of generosity where
mhm,
it's not preconceived, it's not like high and mighty, it's not like I'm so great and I'm giving you something, but it's just
mhm,
just that, being in the moment with people. And to me it like really became like I started to use Kuan Yin, the Chinese bodhisattva, of compassion, as like one of my transition symbols, because that was like this feminine, to me feminine natured sense of compassion where you're not looking for any gain or any, and you're even like, even maybe it's a loss, like, whoops,
mhm.
I think I lost you again.
Well, it was perfect. You were talking about loss, and then you lost me.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh,
Okay,
so good.
it's my new modem router.
It was perfect because you were talking about loss, and then you lost me.
There it is. Yeah, that was, we can play that off as intentional.
Mhm,
Yeah, and just that feeling of like there's a vulnerability for sure. But it's just like this beautiful vulnerability that puts you in relation, community, and contact with others in this way that I could never access before.
mhm,
And people could tell, it's like kids were suddenly like not afraid of me. You know
mhm,
what I mean? And like just in public, just people didn't have that reaction of like, oh, here's, look out, here's a man, someone that's like living in their own little self-existent power or whatever. It's like losing that power, and in a way like losing control and losing domination in a sense, I guess. Like I didn't really think of it that way, but it felt like the loss of all that for the gain of something much better. And I've been wrestling or playing with like what that better thing is, that is like womanhood, I guess, because I feel like every girl basically wants to grow up to be a woman, and like they don't have a definition for it probably. But there's an aspiration there, and I was like, oh, I need to like look at that, like, and I oh boy, this is a long answer, isn't it? So I went through this.
I love it. And there's so many things that you said that I wanted to say something to, but I think the first thing that I'll say is that I absolutely love your answer. I feel really touched by it, because it's almost like there was I'm going to give a roundabout, very feminine way of approaching this too, because I can't go straight. There was an interview with Daniel Schmartenberger in which he was talking about the value of a whale having more value outside of the ocean than inside of the ocean in the culture that we live in, which is so, just as an example of like how distorted, how crazy we are as humans in the moment. Like a whale has no price tag inside the ocean and therefore has no value. And my motivation, my desire to start this project, to start speaking, which feels really counter to an element of mine, which is the vulnerability that you speak of. It feels like I'm constantly igniting my masculine, my broadcasting capacities to do this. And it feels like an effort to start with. It doesn't feel completely second nature, but it feels like necessary. However, when I hear you, it almost feels like we're working for the same purpose, but we're coming at it differently. It's like, as a child, my role models were men, but I didn't want to become a man. I didn't feel the mismatch as a woman in that way. But the world taught me that what was valuable was to have some characteristics that are male. So a lot of women don't grow up to go like, oh wow, I feel that, being vulnerable and just having emotion and generosity is amazing. That's what I want to do. Like we actually suppress our emotions. We have a construct of society in which being professional means that you don't have emotions, right? So like we have created these compartments in which, if we look at it, actually a lot of what we have to leave out is the feminine. So a bunch of the things that I leave out of the door is the feminine. And then it has become a collective agreement. So I'll leave my menstrual cycle out of the door. I'll leave my breastfeeding, dripping boob of milk, whatever, out the door. I'll leave the mess in dialogue that actually can be really creative, but it's not as linear, out of the door. So therefore, either a woman feels like constantly in women's circles, because I led a lot of women's spaces, there is a recognition in these women's spaces, like we are powerful, but we're almost saying that out loud to convince ourselves and getting in touch with our cycles, our physiology, the fact that we actually are cyclical and we're not linear, and we don't have the same level of energy the whole month, but work expects me to have the same energy, or everything else, the world out there expects me to have the same energy. So one way that I frame patriarchy, and again, it might trigger people, but it's just, again, for provoking thought, is like we women don't that have been born with a female physiology don't know how to inhabit the cycles ourselves. Therefore, we inhabit the line, and the line is the masculine to me, and the line is what we call patriarchy, which is a line that just keeps going nowhere without the cycle to bring it back, to go come back, and it's like, oh, now the earth is done, let's go to Mars, let's keep going, and
right, that's a whole like modern age.
Exactly. And what I love about you is about what you shared is that you said, I just inhabited this generosity, this vulnerability, and I saw value in that, and I saw that from where I was sitting, what I represented being a man. Again, that's what I'm interpreting. So maybe correct me if
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
sure. That's totally fine with me.
you
Yeah.
you said, hold on, this is not matching. I want to be physically in a way that matches this generosity or this vulnerability. I want people to recognize
Yes.
me as that, but the world doesn't value that. So you went from a position of power, like you were inhabiting a male figure that has more power, and you said,
Yeah.
I don't want that. I want this vulnerability, this generosity that feels more
Yeah.
powerful, even though the world doesn't see
Yes.
it. And I'm gonna even change, my name,
Yes.
everything to match what I
Mhm.
feel like. Does that?
Yes. Yes. To match and yeah, and to relate to people as this. Yeah, totally. Because it's just like these simple things like a woman in a coffee shop touching her friend on the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know what I mean? These moments, that's like that is power to me. That's like dudes don't do that. Like
Mm-hmm.
in my at least in my where I am, a
Mm-hmm.
guy would never just like, do this little like fun little tap thing or whatever, and then have this sort of subtle communication around that. But having that is just, oh, it's so rich and wondrous. Yeah, it's like a wondrous form of power. And yeah, very like very circular and non-linear. And I totally hear you. Like I'm, part of what obsessed me. I feel like I'm a John Vervaeke robot sometimes these days, but that's because I've been, following his work for 3 years or something. And it was part of what hooked me was the idea that we're in this age called the axial age, where we started this, we have this great myth of we're in the fallen world and we need to get to the higher perfect world, and there's like a path to that place, and it's like this very linear sounding. I mean, the path might be non-linear, but it's still linear in a way, and it kind of replaced, according to him at least, and some other anthropologists or people, replaced the cyclic view of
Mm-hmm.
reality where things were cycles, and I really need whatever the reality of that is. I need that in myself, and that's part of like feeling the need to transform inwardly as well, to like have sure, yeah, have linearity, have the masculine, to whatever extent, but also have that circle around that, because that's like you were saying, like women are the weather, right? Like it's just like we need to get back to like the wider context. And oh yeah, it factors into that social power, that like the way the binding that women do in society, so much of the time, and in these ways that are just not even like, yeah, no, unnoticed, unappreciated, undervalued, even by the people doing them,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, why would you notice if you've just been that?
Mm-hmm. I totally, yeah, I, yeah, I resonate with a lot of your words, and I just see how it is powerful to have somebody, because for me, I was born with my physiology without having any mismatch. So again, it was just natural to just be what the way I'm showing up is just natural.
Yeah.
However, it didn't feel natural to fight for without anger, because I don't really feel, I feel that I worked on, I mean, I have probably have some anger in different contexts, of course I have, like everybody, but when I speak about gender or I speak about the feminine, the masculine, it really truly comes from a place of just wanting more love to flow. I feel that our dance, as humans, we're not dancing well. Like, be it men and women, women, but men, like we're constantly in lack. So I feel that a lot of the conversations between transgender women and cis women, right? That's I don't even know the
Yeah,
term cis women.
that's right. Yeah.
I I feel that it comes both from a place of lack, not all the time, but the arguments, the public arguments. And I feel that, of course, if you have had this mismatch in yourself for a long time, so you're not enough. you're not feeling seen in some way. And then you have the cis women saying that you're not what you're saying you are. That feels really triggering. Then you also have the cis women going, I think that most of them don't even recognize that they don't feel valued as women. I actually feel that because we haven't found our place, in society, like as women, we're trying constantly, like equal rights. Equal rights is beautiful, but we're different. It has to be equal. I was just even reflecting on the film Moana. Like, I have this daughter now, she's 11, and she constantly wants to, her role models are really fighting girls, like a powerful girls that are really like men. Like they try to, Moana. I don't know if you watched the movie. Did you watch the?
When my when our family kids like actually, pay attention for 10 minutes at a time, I've watched little bits and pieces of it.
That movie is like, what it tells me is like, okay, this young little girl that's like petite, she destroys the male god that she meets. Like, he's a male god, and he's kind of like
that's right.
rubbish. He's kind of rubbish. He messes up a lot, and she's like, she's like amazing, and
it's like Maui, right? That was
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And she's amazing, but she's amazing in a more male way of being, because she's very powerful, and she kind of like really, she's powerful in a strength way, she's like, so she uses a lot of the male characteristics. And I think that in some way we still think, and I'm not saying that's just detrimental, but I see, as I watch my children grow, and I have 2 girls, that yes, there are maybe 3 or 4 girls or boys in the class that fit into a different category. Maybe strengths at some point, maybe not, maybe just in the sliding scale of how much feminine energy they have, or masculine. But as a stereotype, it tends to, boys beat up each other and have that testosterone going, and girls have a different way of being. So it tends to be a little bit different in a stereotypical way, that I think it's also important to acknowledge, instead of just flattening everything, and then girls just see value in trying to become like strong physically, or speaking in a more linear way, or whatever it is, the modes that we have collective agreed that that's the ideal. And I think that's really problematic as well.
So much so. Oh my gosh, it's great. And I loved, when you talked about maybe, cis women themselves, like being unable to fully value the feminine within them. I think, just because of like the position that you're put in through life. I mean, it completely makes sense. Like, when I was like, quote, a man, watching it, I was just like, wow, this really sucks, and it didn't make sense to me then either. But the archetype of like the strong woman, like I mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer earlier, and that was totally like, it was a totally, kind of a man's fantasy of what a feminism was. The strong warrior, young, beautiful, but strong, and it just, I feel like that, it's still really predominant in our culture, and that the feminine itself, or the yin, or however you look at that, is degraded. And so women emulate men then, because that's where the power is, or what, I don't want to get too political or whatever, but that's like, that's what we look at as like the value in things. And like, a lot of times I think that's part of where some transphobia for trans women comes from, is that like, oh, you're going against this, you're literally going against where you should be going to get the power and get the virtue in society. Like, or even, you're heading in the wrong direction.
I'd say even it would be, even, I'm imagining, okay, because I don't know, I haven't been close to these fights to actually see what's going on, but I imagine there's also when you feel less than in some way, like in any relationship, then you get angry with your partner or whatever because they didn't unload the dishwasher, but it's not about the dishwasher, it's about something else. So I think it's the same thing. I think it's like, it's like a woman saying, I think in the fights, even though they don't say that, they say, I've had it really tough trying to be you, trying to be men, and now you come with your power and you try to become me. So I'm like, I'm fucked, you know? I'm like, I can't have a place anywhere. So I think it comes from the anger of, so what I think a lot of them don't see is that patriarchy is also within, because a lot of these women have never even felt what the feminine is in them, because we have suppressed it. So I'd say that you connected to an element of the feminine. A lot of women will die without connecting, because they were taught out of it. You know, they were taught out of it. So then they project anger onto you, because they're like, they don't know, but they have been removed from their feminine. And then they see that in your aspiration, of course, you're seeing something that they don't see. Like, you're seeing the beauty and you want it, and they're like, fuck that. I can't even see it in myself, you know? So it's a lack. I think it comes deep lack, I feel.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then all you have left is like the zero-sum game, right? Like of that our culture is so good at playing. Wow. I mean, I feel like that's really profound. Like, you know, it just hits me on an intuitive level, and also like obviously with sadness to think that that's the case, because like, yeah, it's just so funny I mean, it's funny, you know, quote unquote, to me, because I do like have always felt like this reverence for the feminine, wanted to be friends with women, wanted to hang out with women, just wanted to talk with, you know, like women are so cool. Like that was always like, you know, since in my like 25 years ago, have had this kind of, you know, understanding. And then it's like to have that devalued in oneself, and not recognized and appreciated. It's just like, oh my gosh, like you are, you know, like so rich with this, and yeah, and forced to not see it, kind of. Oh, it's just like,
I think it's yeah, thank you for the reflection. Thank you for yeah, saying that, because I think you're making even more, by making a point of it, you're actually reminding me of that, of how yeah, how we actually we're working together. I feel that sometimes, you know, so many of us are in lack. We have not being felt, not being seen, not being heard. And you know, that, you know, if I was coming from that place, I could see me contracting and not being able to hear the words that you're saying. And the words that you're saying, actually, they don't make me feel less of a woman. You're not robbing it from me. You're actually valuing me. You're saying, no, look at that. Like, notice that. Notice how wonderful you are, you know? And I think it's super powerful. I think it's and yeah, it does sadden me that yeah, it does sadden me in a way to see how, I don't know, how pervasive the disconnection is in some fronts, you know. I was even reflecting, there's a couple of things when you're talking about, I'll go to your spiritual point. I mean, when you talked about Kuan Yin and you talked about the connection, the generosity, like, to me, in spiritual terms, I'd say that, you know, the emptiness, the seeking for emptiness is the masculine, the transcendent God, which is, you know, the one, and everything is the one, which is there is truth, there's truth to that end.
Yes.
The fullness, the feminine, the being in love with reality, the being in love with life, the you know, the making love with reality, that just touching a friend and just hugging and just, you know, we're not actually going, we're actually being with and tending and holding and giving birth and feeding and nurturing. And I think that your spiritual experience with Kuan Yin, or your awakening to that side, to me does feel like yeah, it does feel like a very pure, it's like it's almost like it's going to be hard to word this one, but I'll just try my best. It's almost like you're connected to the purest expression of the feminine, and then you just backtracked to go like, okay, let's make this also um, um, match my physiology. Let's because I have this in a different way that's vast, but I want that to, and it feels really profound. Yeah, I just loved hearing that.
It felt like my life had to change to actualize that, you know, and I'm definitely, you know, never going to actualize the actual like bodhisattva level of compassion, but to even connect with it more. Exactly. I mean, when you were talking, I was like, oh yes, 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 this is exactly it, because it's like, you know, coming to the understanding of emptiness is great and everything, and it's like this, you know, profound, like, oh, relief from suffering and things. But then, like, if you have that experience like deeply enough, you start to realize, well, if all of this stuff is empty, the only way I can perceive it is something that's not empty. And then you like, that's when the beloved to me appears, like the beauty, you know, of that um unspeakable, you know. I use beloved, you know, because Rumi's poetry really speaks to me a lot. It really hits the mark for me. But you know, that just has a feel much more, yeah, pervasive, like a mist. And what you're saying now is putting this together for me, because I've had these experiences more recently after several years of transition, and it is actually connecting in with that first experience that like that connected me to Kuan Yin as a symbol. Now, yeah, in a backwards way, like now it's like, oh, the emptiness has, you know, shown me, so to speak, the I wouldn't say the even, but you know, beloved reality. I'll just say it that way for now, which, you know, can come back to all of us. And it yeah, I struggle for words there. It's definitely at that point of like, anything I say, I want to just erase it after I say it. But what you were saying definitely felt exactly right.
Mm. I I again, I think it, um, because I never had any experience apart from not being from my body, from being from this body. I I heard of a friend sharing of a conversation she had with a person that was born in a female physiology, you know, and is transitioning. So she's taking no, they started taking testosterone to yeah, transition. I'm not sure if fully transgender men, but just taking testosterone. and and the recount, which to me felt really, oh, did you glitch? Did you drop? No, you're there.
So sorry. Like last time it was you, and this time it's me.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Did you?
Transitioning toward masculine some
Yes.
way.
So to me, it was an interesting insight, and I'm not sure if this is true for everybody. And I'd love to hear your perspectives from before, how you experienced life before transitioning and now, because what this person said was that in taking testosterone, what they experienced it was as a mild antidepressant. They experienced it was almost a relief from being so enmeshed in other people's emotions, from being so
Oh,
it
yeah.
was almost like they were more detached, and they could detach. And even in their words, you know, I'm so happy to not have to care so much. It was a relief
Yeah.
from caring so much. So to
Oh,
me,
funny.
that I never experienced
Yeah.
anything else, I was like, ah, that makes a lot of sense of like how we have constructed this world. Like if actually it's
Yeah.
easier to detach, you know, and then you can see how you can go and, you know, not have the, you know, you can see that. So I just wanted to have that
Yeah.
reflection from you, and if you have anything to
Oh,
share.
yeah. So good and so cool. Like, I mean, and I'm really happy for this person too, to like find where how they fit the best in the world, of course, you know. Um, and yeah, for me, it was precisely the opposite. Like I'm more enmeshed in people's emotions. I care, like like I like how to care for things has become like central to me, like way more. And
Mhm.
I'm realizing, and this is part of like the inner transition I have to still keep doing is like, oh yeah, I like have all these habits of not caring in the way that I now my brain is saying like you should care this way, and it's my brain is matching my spirit, so to speak. That's not accurate probably, but that's how I feel. It's like, oh yeah, you really like it's what I've wanted deeply is to have this sense of caring. And now my mind has to catch up, my mental has to catch up to that because it's
Mhm.
still kind of just assuming that it's going to be doing its own thing as more of a dude or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I still love it. Like even now, like I'm smiling, like because it's like years into it, and I'm like, the magic of that is so great to me to feel like, oh, this is where I belong. This is my home waters here. And
Mhm.
it is so much more enmeshed with others. And, when I was saying earlier, I went through this whole like process of like discovering my ideal, like the platonic virtue of womanhood in my own life through this process. It's probably too long to get into, but part like there were these visions that came to me during it, like the river with backbone was one of them. Like this, like what the ideal womanhood for me is like this, still connecting with these other rivers and to the land around it and nourishing, but having its own backbone, but it's not a boundary that's like solid, in the same way.
So can you just share a little bit more with me? So that's
Yeah.
is that a journey that you went through, or yeah, tell me a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Like I didn't think it'd be that interesting, so I will though.
Great, I love
Um,
it. Mm.
I was working up to studying Plato, and John Vervaeke was like, "Well, before you read Plato, you should read this book about the Platonic virtue forms and what he
Mhm.
really meant by them." And it's sort of this process, like a Zen koan of like getting to your virtue, connecting to your virtue,
Mhm.
um, or your ideal virtues in the world. So like courage or generosity or anything like that. And really, when you get there, you can't explain them to anyone else in a way that translates in language. They like it's like this. You work on them like you have this inner Socrates that like questions you and challenges you, and just keep working, and you come up with new ideas, and then Socrates challenges them, and at some point this like lightning shoots through it and it like comes alive, and like the virtue is like this living thing that you
Mhm.
can now relate to, rather than an idea or set of ideas or any or concept or anything like that. And this philosopher Michael Lafargue was like, this is what Plato really meant when he was talking about these forms. It was like this thing, and I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not going to put any stake down in that argument, but for me, it's super powerful because it allowed me to look at womanhood, like not just typical womanhood or like whatever, just like, but like what would the virtue form, the ideal, that like archetype of womanhood be for me?
Mhm.
And there's a
Mhm.
strong sense of home with it. There's a sense of the home that constantly affords aspiration to others, like in these like radiating like concentric waves going outwards. There's a sense of a river with backbone in it that's like no longer having that like hard boundary like a
Mhm.
square, but like still like having boundaries in this new way that's like interactive in a different way. And
Mhm.
that makes me like really curious about like how we look at, everyone's talking about boundaries
Mhm.
in culture these days and how important they are, but I just feel like they're kind of different between genders,
Yeah. Mm.
Um,
I think they're
yeah.
massively different. See, I love, see, it's important these conversations because it's really hard to have a conversation with, for example, if I have this conversation with a man, which I've tried many times,
Mm,
with a man that has
mm,
no, it's a man that has been born a man and now he's still a man. If I
yeah.
talk to him about boundaries in a different way, they actually don't understand what I mean.
Oh,
Me,
sure.
and for me to actually go, it doesn't feel like we're talking about the same thing, but I can't prove it, right? How am I going to prove they feel different? Because all I've
Yes.
got is my experience and the experience of some female friends. And I go like, even I'll share with you something.
Mhm,
It's not even a
mhm.
completely formed thought. Like I've written
Okay,
pages
great.
about it. I've just inquired into it because I go, even the way that therapy works a lot with narcissism, and I'm not saying that women can't be narcissists, but I do think that the narcissism, the way it shows up in a lot of women, it feels different because it's almost like so not boundaried. It's so fluid. It's not
Oh,
boundaried. It's so enmeshed that you actually become really
yeah.
insecure. You have this deep insecurity. Then you collapse into your own voice, and then you obviously let the masculine or whoever has a voice, which is the masculine in women that have more masculine, or in men, to dictate. You just let it dictate because the boundaries, the actual boundaries, are more solid. I feel that the pathology. So I'm just completely, making a blank. Like I don't have any theory to prove that, but I feel that
You can convince me though.
yeah, I feel that the pathology of the masculine, pathological, is narcissistic, like really strong ego structure, and
Yes.
very boundaried, and the feminine is very fluid and enmeshed, and is
Yeah.
and they're completely different expressions, and therefore you can have, for example, just women allowing something like cesarean sections to exist, and they feel thankful. I'm not saying, let me just
Yeah.
frame
Yeah.
this. Cesarean sections are great and they should exist for 5%, 10% of births. I don't know how many percents that actually go wrong. Beautiful, necessary. But now the fact that we actually believe that a lot of things, cesarean is just an example, there are a lot of things that are fixing us, hormone replacement therapy, or things for PMS, or this is just in the physiological side, but there are other sides.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of things to fix the wrong in us, the pathological, which actually is the feminine, is not the pathological, the feminine. All this fixing, and we just go like, oh yay, thank you, because I think we're just really, I can see, because I was like that. I took the pill for 10 years, really grateful. I did everything that culture told me, because I just, at that time, I just couldn't see any other way. But I'm just, when I hear you talking about boundaries in a different way, I go like, well, that's an interesting thing that I'd love to explore with you, maybe in a different conversation with even like maybe a couple of men, me, because I'd love to see how it actually feels for different people.
Yeah, I swear there's a difference. And it's healthy for there to be a difference. Like that's what I feel like. I need different, it's more give and take for sure. That's what I feel like. They're more flexible, but they also can like bounce out more too. It's like um that's my sense of it rather than the rigid, yeah, I am this. It has to, and I feel like this probably, this could get me in trouble too, but like just that like the typical, like if you're looking at like a woman's body translating into a woman's brain, like the way the woman's body literally has a person inside of it. If it's like a cis woman, you can get pregnant, and that, typically, when you're penetrated during sex, there's like this whole difference in different ways. Kids latch onto you more. Like there's just this very different like reproductive thing, and I feel like there's probably something in our brains, and I'll say our brains now because my brain has eaten female hormones for a couple of years, but that structurally accords with that physical being, and again, like I don't want to get too cut and dried with it either, but like, and then so therefore like our sense of ethics and boundaries and all that stuff like has this more fluid give and take, and boundaries don't have to be outside of ourselves, like they can be inside ourselves in a way too, but it's messier from that linear perspective, so more complex. I don't know what yeah, that was what you brought up for me for sure.
No, I love hearing that, and I was even appreciating when you said, I still want boundaries. And I was like, even this recognition might have come because you had boundaries,
Yeah,
Because
could be.
a lot of women don't even notice that actually there is a lack of boundaries. It's like you're so
Mm,
swimming in the experience of it. So I'd say that a lot of women, it's not everybody, but a lot of women, lack of boundaries, they wouldn't name it as lack of boundaries because they hadn't thought of it, but the enmeshment, um,
yeah.
is that, lack of boundaries. And I love that, it's almost like a teaching in some way, because you had the experience of being a man, that you're like, oh no, boundaries are helpful, so you can have a bit, but they're more permeable, and it's like inside
Yeah.
that you're bringing in with you, which is helpful for being a woman. Because for me,
Mm,
I'd say it's recent that I'm really noticing that boundaries is a thing for me. And I
mm.
noticed that even in the community, I was really, active in the Rebel Wisdom community, a while ago. And
Okay. Yeah.
uh, in that community, when it was a community space, I remember that my sense was that I don't want to say problem person, because we're not, but every problematic, um, uh, interaction, I always
Mm,
wanted to include everybody. I wanted to give space, like I'm big
mm.
mother. And
Yes.
the men in the community were like, no, but it's important also to go, no, that person stepped the boundaries, it's unhealthy for the rest of the community, we need to take that person out. And
Yeah.
to me, it felt like a massive learning into my masculine, because before I thought everybody needs to be included all the time. And now I can see that actually there are points that you're like, no, it's okay, it's healthy to
Yeah.
let the person go. But it feels harder. It actually feels really counter.
Yes. Yes, totally. And I think yeah, I don't know if it's because my brain has changed from hormones specifically or from just roles and adapting to thinking of
Mm,
myself differently or whatever, but I just feel like when I was working on that platonic ideal or whatever, I there was one image of just like this, some girl giving someone to like some drug addict on the street, just like a piece of food or something. There's this sense of like, yeah, you're all included,
mm,
which is wonderful to me. And also, yeah, I see what you're saying, that there's also time to really just put down a hard line, as needed.
mhm,
So yeah, it's like the yin yang of it, I guess, huh?
mm. But it's yeah, it's a very fascinating. I think that I appreciate hearing your reflections, that that now you're saying, yeah, I am experiencing more enmeshment, and
Mhm.
I find joyous, because obviously in
Yeah.
some way your spirit was already longing for that, and then now you're just,
Yes.
so yeah.
Yeah, I learned, more of a masculine upbringing, which never really took very completely, to my being, but and my spirit did want something different.
Mm,
Um, so this feels like liberating, even though it's that again a loss in a way, there was there was this clip from the popular, the Lord of the Rings movies, and it's in the book too, but Lady Galadriel is tempted by the ring of power, and she's this elf queen, right? She's powerful already, and then she resists the temptation of the ring of power, and she says, I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel. And I was like, if I fucking diminish, that's great. If I remain me, that's like all that matters at this point.
mm,
And it just I really resonated with that image of like the power of loss, even that womanhood seems to embody so well, like I don't know, giving up a child or something. Not, I can't relate to it, but I've seen it in people, and that just the power that of women's emotions around stuff like that. And
mm,
I remember at the end of Socrates' life, he was like kind of like, I think, scolding his wife or something, oh woman, stop crying, I gotta go to my execution and be a dude and be noble. And of course Socrates is great, but
mm,
I felt like there was like a little bit like he missed some of the power of the grieving, like that was more honest at the end than
mm,
hoping for something better still, or like the next life or whatever. He kind of had like a hope that, well, maybe I'll go on and be reincarnated in some way,
mm,
which is you know, fine, whatever.
I'm not familiar with that. So what's that? That's his wife? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think it, oh boy, yeah, like I might be wrong, but in the Apologia, like the last, you know, the story of his like trial basically, and
Mhm.
I think it's in the Apologia, but he like, you know, he's kind of like, you know, oh woman, stop your crying, you know, you're bothering me with this emotion. Oops.
You're still there, but just frozen.
Here I am. Okay. You know, I think it's the Apologia where he's saying, you know, oh woman, stop your crying, you're bothering me, you're disrupting this, you know, I'm going to my noble death here. Oh, are you gone again?
Yeah, no, yeah, can you hear me? Yes, you're back.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay,
It's
I hope I stay here this time.
at least I'm not apologetic. Last time was me, and now today's.
Yeah, totally. It's like little of each. Yeah. And I feel better since it was one of each. Um,
So you're
you
talking
know, so
about apologia.
yeah, and how Socrates, I think it's in the Apologia, or, you know, it's at the end of his life and he's like telling his wife, or, you know, not, you know, quit bothering him with her lamentations or, you know, whatever, and sorrow. And I'm like, but the power of like love and loss is in that sorrow. And that, you know, even
Mm,
in that, I feel like there's
mm,
this like feminine power of just letting go and loss that women do better at embodying in general.
mm, mm,
You know, men could totally do it, of course. Like with all this stuff, I'm never like hard
mhm,
and fast rules, but um,
mhm,
just like I feel like he kind of missed that a little bit. If you can criticize Socrates like that, he just didn't accept the facing the loss directly, you
mm,
know, and just honoring it with
mhm,
sorrow.
mhm.
So I forgot where we got after all the disconnections. I forgot how we got onto that
I think, oh,
subject.
I forgot how we got onto that too. I think um don't remember, but it's okay. It's totally relevant.
Lost.
I'm sure we'll recognize the pattern once we watch this. But
Yeah.
but I was just thinking that the the man, just to bring into a concrete way, so the menstrual cycle, for example, if a woman actually is with that concrete part of herself, grieving is present in the physiology. It's
Mm,
there because you're constantly
mm,
grieving an egg that hasn't been fertilized, and
yes.
the potential of life, and then it dies,
Potential.
right? So you have that, and the whole deconstruction part of the cycle is what culture
Mm,
calls PMS, which is the death and decomposition and the composting and the.
mm,
So it is that, you know um if I take
mm,
what that person said about taking testosterone and going, oh, I can detach a bit more, I couldn't do that before. It's
mhm,
fascinating for me to see. And also in your recounts of like, yeah, now I do feel more enmeshed. So from that
mhm,
perspective, like, imagine actually being enmeshed, but
mhm.
constantly having a narrative that you shouldn't be enmeshed.
Oof.
Because the abstraction, the construct
Ouch.
of what it is to be a woman is to be a man, really, in like the world. So in a way,
Yeah.
it's like you are enmeshed, you are less boundaried, you are cyclical, you are constantly constructing
Mm,
and deconstructing through your cycle, building the egg and deconstruct over and over again for 40 years of your life. And
yeah.
kind of just have to walk through as if nothing. And I feel that actually it shows, like in this recount of that you just said, that the apologia, even if it's not completely correct or what you said, whatever, I'm not
Mhm,
even holding
mhm,
on to it, but that part of it feels really true. If from his perspective, he's more detached, of course he's going to advocate for that. And if the woman is
mhm,
actually has been taught that actually, her measurement or whatever the way she is actually
mm,
not desirable or not necessary or not
mhm,
intelligent
mhm,
or not something, then
mhm. A weakness. Yeah.
weakness. And then the writers of history tend to be either
Mm,
men or the ones that write as men, like with the same modes of intelligence.
yeah.
Then we can keep perpetuating something And of course, the other ways are forgotten because the nurturing, the holding, the grieving, that's not big enough to tell in history, just mundane, right?
Yeah.
We've
Yeah. Who
never.
was Socrates' mom? You know, what was her deal? For instance,
Yes.
how did he get raised?
Yeah, exactly. And
You
that's
know?
just yeah, that's just really, yeah, it's really interesting to me to just I feel like it's almost like what we're doing here is almost like archaeology into like what it is to be you, Rachel, what it is to be me,
Yeah.
how do we overlap and what do you, it's
It's like this onto phenomenal archaeology kind of thing.
feels really, really, yeah, it feels really nice and insightful. It feels that it
Yeah.
constantly gives me more to reflect upon and to be with, and I hope that it kind of like is doing that in some way to
Oh.
like to others, as well, to you and to others, so that they can go like, oh, maybe I don't agree entirely, but let me just reflect on that, or um yeah.
Yeah. Let's like, yeah, like non-linearly reach for this together, right? And kind of I think there's just so much that you've said that, yeah, has sparked a lot in my brain, you know, both from last time and this time and your podcast before and with Greg. And this thing about the menstrual cycle and loss is now, that's going to be on my mind because I just, yeah, there's something about the power of women's grieving that really
Mhm.
has struck me more recently. It's just so complete and whole. And maybe there's some, you
Mm.
know, I'm just feeling that tie-in. I'm not even maybe, but just I'm just resonating with that
Mm.
tie-in on the physiological level.
Maybe even in connecting, I mean, and we spoke briefly about that last time we spoke. So for example, for you, tying, becoming aware of the moon cycle, of the cycle of the moon,
Mhm,
and just
mhm.
really like intending to sink in, to really feel the fullness of ovulation in the full moon, and the like the descent into the composting and grieving into the in the dark moon, to kind of like um maybe just become aware of that cyclical. um are you frozen? Are we frozen? Are we here? Mm. Are you there?
Oh my goodness. This new modem is going to become an old, or this new router is going to become an old router really quickly. Oh
Oh,
my goodness. The composting was what I heard.
no, that's totally good. That's good. That's all like um it makes sense to our like we wanted, the intention was to not be perfect, right? So perfect. It's
Yeah,
all like dropping,
it's definitely succeeding.
succeeding. No,
It's
it's
like a
just
metaphor. Yeah.
I just feel that actually just even time intending to be direct relationship to the cycles of the moon, of
Yeah.
course impacts everybody, but it actually, most of us don't think about that. But it's another layer, because even me still having my menstrual cycle, of course I don't have my period every time with the dark moon, which would be
Mhm,
the kind of blueprint of the energy. So it's very
mhm.
interesting to bleed in the full moon, because you have one side is expanding, externally, but
Oh yeah.
inside. So there's all these different ways of experiencing, which are very
Yeah.
fascinating. But time, yeah. So I think that this grieving of the dark moon and then coming out of it, and then just it feels, yeah. I'd love to just, yeah, explore that with you, and how if
That's
you're
so
playing with it,
cool.
how does that manifest in your world? And
Yeah, that's great. And you know, Kuan Yin is like a moon bodhisattva. The moon is one of her big symbols, and I'm starting to feel like that's not a coincidence.
mm-hmm. Oh, beautiful. I'm just wanting to, we're kind of coming to the end of our time together, and I'm just yeah, I just want to give you some space to
Mm,
share any thoughts that feel alive for you
mm,
right now. And of
yeah.
course, I don't feel this is our last conversation. I think that we're gonna have many more, hopefully, recorded and
Yeah.
non-recorded.
Same, definitely. And I guess, you know, more feelings and thoughts. I feel really warm. I feel really just, heard and valued, and I've gotten so much, from you to chew on also, but just the sense that like yeah, having like one of these conversations that really opens up the space, and internally as well, like it opened up some theoretical space, but also like I felt like, able to just kind of have emotions come and go during the conversation more freely than, like a Zoom talk with someone I've met once before would ever be normally. So thank you for that. That's just really like a really great opportunity. Wonderful to, your warmth comes through on that, but and it's a different way of being too. And so I'm really excited about like what you're doing as in your project as it gets going in general, not just me, which I'm excited to be, I'm excited to be part of it, but I'm also like this is cool. I think this is a needed thing, like, and just adding more richness, adding the circle to everything.
Thank you. I really, yeah, I appreciate hearing you. I appreciate having been here with you. And yeah, I think the first email that we exchanged just said something to me, which is, what did you say? I'm looking forward to a conversation of in reinhabiting womanhood. Did you say that? Reinhabiting.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
I love it. I love it because it's like our conversation was not political. That was like, how can we, like, both of us want to be this, and I am
Yeah.
kind of like trying to be more of this, and you are trying to, like both of us,
Yes.
and allowing others the space to be more of this energy that's
Mm.
so not valued. So reinhabiting womanhood, it feels like a perfect, yeah, that's what we had a conversation on today, which feels perfect. So,
That's
yeah,
so
thank
true. We did it.
we did it. And thank you so much, Rachel. And I will
Yeah,
be seeing much more of you, hopefully.
I
Much
hope
love
so
to you.
too. Much love to you. Looking forward to it.